song with the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cages loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high,
You all for coming today.
the army's on its way. Count off the cages loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along.
Budget request for both the State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development. Happy to, at the top, turn this over to the Deputy Secretary of State, John J. Sullivan, and the USAID Administrator, Mark Green, for opening comments. At the conclusion, we'll invite some subject matter experts up to kind of drill down in some of the detailed questions that you might have. Thank you. Deputy Secretary Sullivan.
Thank you, Robert, for that introduction, and I want to thank my friend and colleague, USAID Administrator Ambassador Mark Green, for joining me here today to present the fiscal year 2020 budget request for the Department of State and USAID. Before I get started, I want to say on behalf of the Department of State that we want to extend our deepest condolences to the families and loved ones of those killed in the tragic crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. There were a number of Americans, citizens on that flight, people who worked for the United Nations affiliated organizations, friends, colleagues, partners of ours. It's really an extremely sad and tragic moment for us. And our colleagues in Addis, in Nairobi, and Washington are working very hard to provide all the appropriate consular assistance that we can to the families of the victims at this difficult time. Getting to the subject at hand, the President's fiscal year 2020 budget request is for $40 billion for the Department of State and USAID. With this funding level, we will protect our citizens at home and abroad, advance American prosperity and values, and support our allies and partners overseas. The State Department and USAID are on the front lines of the most pressing foreign policy and national security issues facing our country today. Staffing from both of our agencies are working very hard each day to protect American freedom, hold China and Russia accountable as members of a rules-based international system, support the people of Venezuela as they work toward a peaceful restoration of democracy in their country, prevent infectious disease outbreaks from reaching our borders, assist countries to become self-reliant economic and security partners, and so much more. With all of this on the line, we need all of our colleagues, our entire team, to be safe, prepared, and ready to take on any new challenges at a moment's notice. Keeping our citizens safe and secure requires constant vigilance and adequate resources. Our fiscal year 2020 budget request prioritizes the safety of our diplomatic and foreign assistance staff overseas. It protects Chief of Mission personnel from emerging threats and invests in safe, secure, and functional facilities. It will enable both the State Department and USAID to recruit, sustain, and train our global diplomatic and development workforce. Our agencies are developing new capabilities for the 21st century. Together, with so many critical goals to advance on behalf of the American people, the State Department and USAID need resources for both diplomatic and foreign assistance programs. The fiscal year 2020 budget request accounts for those resources and puts U.S. foreign policy on firm footing to move into the future. Our request is guided by the principle that taxpayer dollars must be used wisely. We want to maximize the investment made by the American people and deliver exceptional results on their behalf. President Trump has made it clear that U.S. foreign assistance should serve America's national interest and should support those countries that help us to advance our foreign policy goals. This budget maintains critical support for key U.S. allies, including Israel, Jordan, Egypt, and Colombia. Through strategic funding and programming, this budget positions the United States to win. This means ensuring our nation is fully engaged in regions of the world upon which our national security and future prosperity depend. In recent years, we have seen China proactively applying its power to exert its influence in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond. Under President Trump's leadership, the United States has taken decisive steps to respond to China's aggressive actions. We recognize that the United States' future security, prosperity, and leadership depends on maintaining a free, open, and secure Indo-Pacific region. To advance the Indo-Pacific strategy, the budget request nearly doubles U.S. foreign assistance and diplomatic engagement resources to the region. Our budget request is also guided by the realization that the threats imposed by Russia have evolved beyond external or military threats and now include influence operations in the very heart of America and the Western world. This budget prioritizes countering Russian malign influence in Europe, Eurasia, and Central Asia. As we speak, the people of Venezuela continue to fight for their freedom in the face of a tyrannical and corrupt leader who refuses to step down. The fiscal year 2020 budget request includes funding to support democracy in Venezuela and provides the flexibility to make more funds available to support a democratic transition, including up to $500 million in transfer authority. In the past year, the United States has been out front in global efforts to help persecuted religious and ethnic minorities in the Middle East and elsewhere. On a trip to Iraq last fall, I experienced firsthand the positive impact of this kind of assistance and what it has done in these devastated communities. Working with local actors and community leaders, our assistance programs clear the explosive remnants of war to help keep families safe, restore access to services like health and education, improve economic opportunities, and more. But there's much more work that needs to be done. The fiscal year 2020 budget supports an increase in our efforts to empower religious and ethnic minorities, including requesting funds for new opportunities among different communities in need, and continuing U.S. leadership to promote global.
All right, folks. So right now we're waiting for footage from inside the State Department, where Mike Pompeo is going to have a press conference coming up in just a few minutes. What you're watching right now happened a little bit over half an hour ago, and that was the original press briefing from the State Department, but it was just released this very second, a few minutes ago, that Mike Pompeo is going to have a press conference. A lot of stuff is going to be covered on this press conference, folks. We're going to be talking about Venezuela. We're going to be talking about North Korea. We're going to be talking about a bunch of other places where there's a lot of conflict going on right now. As you guys saw, there was a lot of conflict last week regarding India and Pakistan. So that is also going to be coming up. So make sure you guys please share this live stream on social media. And don't forget to give this live stream a thumbs up. This was last minute, folks. Let's see what Mike Pompeo has to say.
Global religious freedom. In addition, our budget request for fiscal 2020 includes a diplomatic progress fund, so we can effectively respond to new opportunities arising from diplomatic and peace progress and emerging counter-Iran needs. The diplomatic challenges we face today are particularly difficult due to rapid, continual advances in media and technology. Our human resources and organizational structures must keep pace with these changes. The fiscal year 2020 budget fully funds state and USAID's current workforce levels, enabling us to take on emerging policy challenges. The priority we place on safety and security extends beyond physical facilities to our networks and data. The budget request will seek to strengthen the State Department and USAID IT systems, prioritizing cybersecurity enhancements. And speaking of the threats to our homeland, there are few efforts as important to this administration and to the safety and security of the American people as securing our borders. The State Department and USAID budget request will support U.S. border security by strengthening visa vetting, targeting illicit pathways that transnational criminal organizations are using to traffic drugs, money, weapons, and even human beings from the Western Hemisphere, and enhancing governance and boosting local economies to discourage illegal immigration. Our budget request for fiscal 2020 also protects against infectious disease threats by bolstering country capacity to prevent, detect, and respond to any future outbreaks and prevent epidemics. These efforts mean retaining our place as a global leader in health assistance. With this budget, the United States will remain the single largest donor to global HIV/AIDS relief efforts. Several other important additions to the fiscal year 2020 budget request will increase private sector involvement in global development, optimize our humanitarian assistance, and advance partner countries in their journey towards self-reliance. My colleague, USAID Administrator Ambassador Mark Green, will introduce those vital elements of the 2020 budget request shortly. Through all of these efforts and more, our budget promotes American interests while continuing our country's legacy as a beacon of freedom to the world. The President's budget request for fiscal year 2020 sets our agencies and our country up for success, and I appreciate the opportunity to introduce it to all of you this afternoon. Again, thank you for joining us, and with that, I will turn it over to Ambassador Mark Green.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Sullivan. John laid out well, I think, a number of the USAID and state shared priorities, so I'll keep my remarks relatively brief. But I would like to begin in joining him in expressing our sadness over the many lives lost in yesterday's Ethiopian Airlines crash. As was mentioned, we understand that it included at least 8 U.S. citizens, as well as a number of members of USAID partner organizations. As many of you know, I have really deep gratitude and admiration for the many heroes of humanitarian work. And this particular route and this particular flight was used regularly by humanitarian and development organizations in the region. People working each and every day to save lives and make the world just a little bit better place, despite the risks. Our hearts go out to all of those who lost loved ones, and our thoughts and prayers are truly with them during this difficult time. With that, on to the more mundane subject of the budget. While fiscally conservative, I believe this budget's request will support our goal of advancing countries on their journey to self-reliance. It aims to help partner countries build capacity so they can eventually take on their own development challenges. By supporting our tools aimed at reducing the reach of conflict, preventing the spread of pandemic diseases, and counteracting the drivers of violence, instability, and other security threats, this budget will also strengthen U.S. national security. It also strengthens American economic leadership by supporting our investments that expand markets for American goods, leveling the playing field for American businesses, as well as supporting more stable, more resilient, and more democratic societies. As many of you have noted in recent months, many parts of the world have seen an exponential growth of predatory financing that is dressed up as foreign assistance. This budget supports USAID's efforts to aggressively communicate the stark differences between authoritarian financing tools and the approach that we and our allied donor nations use. Our approach is true assistance. It helps partner nations build their own self-reliance in a more dynamic, private enterprise-driven future. It incentivizes reform to spur private enterprise and free markets, attract investments, and again, foster self-reliance. We also aim to help partner countries recognize the costs of alternative models, like those of China and Russia. Their approach seeks to weaken confidence in democratic and free market systems, saddle countries with unsustainable debt, lead to the forfeiture of strategic resources, and further the militaristic ambitions of those authoritarian actors. In coming weeks, we will unveil a framework that we'll use to help counter malign Kremlin influence, especially in
All
Europe,
right, folks.
and Eurasia,
So
and
give me a
Central
second
Asia.
here. Give me a second, folks. Give me a second.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. I want to make some brief remarks about the situation, an update on the situation in Venezuela, and an update on U.S. Activity related to Venezuela. Over the past few days, Venezuelans have been thrown literally into darkness thanks to a massive electrical blackout. Patients awaiting treatment in hospitals are dying. Food is rotting. Telecommunications networks are entirely collapsing. It's worth spending just a minute on how we got here. Nicolas Maduro promised Venezuelans a better life in a socialist paradise. And he delivered on the socialism part, which has proved time and time again is a recipe for economic ruin. The paradise part, not so much. Just consider the facts. The World Bank ranks Venezuela's business environment 188th out of 190 countries. Only Somalia and Eritrea are worse. The United States did not do that. The expropriations of land and industry and an end to the rule of law did that. Agriculture production is down 70% since 2006. Manufacturing down by 75%. Oil production down by half since Maduro took power in 2013. The United States didn't do all that. Maduro did that. 1 month of food today for an average Venezuelan costs a family more than 100 times the monthly minimum wage. Nearly 70% of Venezuelan hospitals lack basic medicines. More than 90% of Venezuelans live below the poverty line. All of this brought to you by the socialism of Maduro. But this story is not complete without acknowledging the central role Cuba and Russia have played and continue to play in undermining the democratic dreams of the Venezuelan people and their welfare. First, Cuba. No nation has done more to sustain the death and daily misery of ordinary Venezuelans, including Venezuela's military and their families, than the communists in Havana. Cuba is the true imperialist power in Venezuela. The Cuban government of Miguel Diaz-Canel provides political cover for Maduro and his henchmen so that they may stay in power. It's Cuba that has offered Maduro its unwavering solidarity. It's Cuba that calls Venezuela's true government, led by interim President Juan Guaido, which 54 of the world's democratic nations recognize as a legitimate government. The Cubans call this a puppet government of the United States. Yet it's Cuba that's trained Venezuelan secret police in torture tactics, domestic spying techniques, and mechanisms of repression the Cuban authorities have wielded against their own people for decades. Members of the Cuban military and intelligence services are deeply entrenched in the Venezuelan state. Cuban security forces have displaced Venezuelan security forces in a clear violation of Venezuelan sovereignty. I even hear that Maduro has no Venezuelans around him. Many of his personal security and closest advisors are acting not at the direction of the Venezuelan people, and frankly, perhaps not even at the direction of Maduro, but rather at the direction of the Cuban regime. They provide physical protection and other critical material and political support to Maduro and to those around him. So when there's no electricity, thank the marvels of modern Cuban-led engineering. When there's no water, thank the excellent hydrologists from Cuba. When there's no food, thank the Cuban communist overlords. Why is Cuba asserting so much influence in Venezuela? What's in it for them? Follow the ideology, follow the corrupt elites, and perhaps most importantly, follow the money. Cuba's communist revolutionaries share a natural affinity with Maduro's socialists. They both disdain private property rights, the rule of law, and free and fair elections. The very same economic theories that have decimated the Cuban economy since 1959 have now turned Venezuela's economy, one of the richest in Latin America, into a case of decline that economists study with amazement and horror. Both of these countries routinely violate the basic human rights of their peoples. The two nations also share a feature: a deeply corrupt ruling class. Maduro learned from the Castros that the best way to stay in power is to buy enough generals to protect you and make sure that the only way to be rich, or even to avoid poverty, is to feed off the regime and stay in its good graces. Lastly, there's an economic relationship between Cuba and Venezuela as well. The Maduro regime sends up to 50,000 barrels of oil to Cuba per day, and Cuba needs this cheap Venezuelan energy to prop up its tottering socialist economy, while Maduro needs Cuban expertise in repression to keep his grip on power. That's a match made in hell. Russia, too, has created this crisis. It, too, for its own reasons, is thwarting the Venezuelan people's legitimate democratic hopes and their dreams. Moscow, like Havana, continues to provide political cover to Maduro regime while pressuring countries to disregard the democratic legitimacy of the interim president Guaido. It's Russia that vetoed the UN-sponsored resolution on Venezuela in the Security Council on February 28th. This UN Security Council resolution called for unhindered access and delivery of assistance to all those in need and supported the restoration of democracy and the rule of law in Venezuela. It's Russia that chose, rather than supporting this noble goal, it instead put forward its own resolution that served no purpose other than to bolster the illegitimate Maduro regime. Fortunately, the international community sharply rebuked Russia for this critical circus. Russia scrounged only 4 votes from the 15-member UN Security Council. Russia claimed at the UN that humanitarian aid deliveries were merely an attempted illegal border crossing for the delivery of unknown cargo. The world knows what was really going on that day. Russia has also used its state-sponsored disinformation organs like Russia Today and Sputnik to divert attention from the humanitarian disaster of the Maduro regime. Russia has spent an enormous amount of money in Venezuela to support close ties with the regime. Russian loans and investments in Venezuela total more than $17 billion. Russian companies continue, to this day, to try to help the Maduro regime turn the country's gold reserves into cash, further squandering the assets of the Venezuelan people, assets they will need to rebuild their future. Russia's state-owned oil company, Rosneft, continues to purchase crude oil cargoes from PDVSA, Venezuela's state-owned oil company, in defiance of U.S. sanctions. And Rosneft's CEO, Igor Sechin, continues to throw a lifeline to the regime. Recently, Sechin ordered Rosneft to sell even more oil to the Maduro regime. You'll recall that PDVSA was once known as the crown jewel of the Venezuelan people. PDVSA is today now a personal ATM for the Maduro regime and for Russian oligarchs and kleptocrats. And Russia, too, has provided the Chavez and Maduro regimes with large quantities of arms, including 5,000 portable air defense systems and other forms of lethal assistance. The Kremlin is standing with its Venezuelan cronies against the will of the people of a sovereign nation, to protect a Moscow-friendly regime. It's worth taking just a moment to compare Cuba and Russia's malign actions with what the United States has done. The United States has recognized Juan Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela and used diplomacy to convince other countries to do the same. Today, over 50 nations have made this proper choice and formally recognized Juan Guaido. We've given more than $195 million to help Venezuelan refugees, including $152 million worth of humanitarian assistance and $43 million in economic and development assistance. We've made sure that wealth derived from Venezuela's precious resources goes to the people instead of lining the pockets of the Maduro mafia. The United States has revoked more than 250 visas for individuals responsible for undermining Venezuela's democracy and those who benefit from the regime's corruption. And just today, we sanctioned a Moscow-based bank jointly owned by Russian and Venezuelan state-owned companies that is helping perpetuate the misery in Venezuela by doing business with PDVSA. The nations that support Maduro are, by the nature of this illegitimate regime, carrying out the very foreign interventionism of which they accuse others. Today, the United States is drawing a clear line between those who aid the forces of repression and those who give life to the Venezuelan people's democratic dreams. There is no ambiguity here about the truth. Thank you. Happy to take a couple questions.
Okay, so we have time for 2 questions. Let's go with Associated Press. Matt.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Secretary.
Right.
Hope you have a good trip to Texas tomorrow.
Thank you.
You mentioned that Russia was able to get only 4 out of 15 votes in favor of this resolution of the Security Council. But there are other people who point out that you've only gotten 54, or interim President Guaido has only got 54 countries out of 195 or so in the General Assembly. We're talking roughly about the same. So are you satisfied with the pace of the momentum behind Guaido and his leadership? And secondly, you said follow the money when you were talking about Cuba, follow the ideology, and then mentioned oil. But there are a lot of people, you would probably call them conspiracy theorists out there, who say follow the oil, right? And say that this is all the U.S. trying to get Venezuela's oil. And so I want to ask you, is this about the U.S. getting Venezuela's oil? And did the U.S. have anything to do with the power outage?
So let me try and take those in reverse chronological order. With respect to the power outages, those are a direct result of years and years of neglect to the Venezuelan energy system. You can talk to any international energy expert. They've seen it. The system has had problems for an awfully long time. Their ability to get it back online has always proven difficult. And over the past several years, it's gotten worse. And that was the cause of the blackouts that have taken place. And my guess, knowing a little bit of engineering, will continue to take place. Second question was, what Matt, remind me what the second one was. The first one was about, were we satisfied with oil? We're trying to get the oil for the Venezuelan people.
Not for
the Venezuelan people. We are attempting to restore basic rule of law, transparency, democracy, and the wealth that sits in the property basin of Venezuela is for the Venezuelan people.
And then the pace of
And the pace of, the first question is the pace of change. We always wish things could go faster, but I'm very confident that the tide is moving in the direction of the Venezuelan people, and will continue to do so. It doesn't take much for you to see what's really going on there. The circle is tightening. The humanitarian crisis is increasing by the hour. I talked with our senior person on the ground there in Venezuela last night at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock last night. You can see the increasing pain and suffering that the Venezuelan people are suffering from. It is democracy and the rule of law, and the interim President Juan Guaido that offer the best opportunity for the Venezuelan people to turn the tide and regain the greatness of Venezuela. And the OAS, the Lima Group, with the United States in support, aim to help them achieve that.
Thank you.
New York Times, David Sanger.
Your support of Juan Guaido was early, and I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what you've been doing since that time. First of all, you're providing him with any personal protection. I know that Mr. Bolton issued a warning when Guaido went back into Venezuela about his personal safety. We're wondering if you're doing for him what the United States did in past years in Afghanistan and elsewhere where the U.S. was central to providing their protection. I'm wondering if you're doing any other steps that could be viewed as ways of consolidating his power.
I think your question, I'm not going to talk about particular actions that we may or may not be taking with respect to the security situation for the leadership in Venezuela. Just like I don't talk about the security situation for any leader around the world.
We certainly talk about it in the Afghan case.
Well, we're not going to in this State Department. Maybe other administrations chose to do that. We're not going to do that. As for actions we've taken to support Juan Guaido, I think we've been very transparent about the activities we're taking. We're supporting every country who's willing to get on the team and help us get to the right place. The American people have been enormously generous. If you looked at our budget, we've asked for up to $500 million to help Venezuela in the year ahead if we get to the right place where that kind of level of resources need, a very significant level of American resources. We're beginning to build out a coalition that will provide its resources as well, because it won't be an America alone proposition to restore the economy of the Venezuelan nation. And then we've done our best to help Juan Guaido build his team out as well, by our team on the ground providing the same kind of services that we provide in every country to help other governments be successful. And we'll continue to do that as long as our team is there inside of Venezuela.
Wrap it up there, Mr. Secretary.
I'll take one more.
Thank you.
Leslie Rotten, Reuters.
Thanks. Hello, Mr. Secretary.
Hi, how are you?
A couple of questions. The one is, which other countries in the world are hiding Venezuelan assets? Number two, you met with the Indian Foreign Secretary today. Did he agree to stop buying oil from Maduro's government? They said they were going to, they've told us that they were going to talk to you about this very issue. So what exactly are you asking of them, and have they agreed?
Yeah, so we're asking the same thing of India as we are of every country. Do not be the economic lifeline for the Maduro regime. So we talked about today. I certainly won't characterize the conversations. They're private conversations, but I'm very confident in the same way that India has been incredibly supportive of our efforts on Iran. I'm confident that they too understand the real threat to the Venezuelan people. And so we had a good conversation around that. And in terms of which other countries are hiding assets, I assure you that those countries will know. But I'm not going to share that with you today, because if I mention them here today, goodness knows how many of them will end up inside of Russia. We do not want assets that are around the world taken and transferred to Russia, where they'll be hidden in the very way that I described in my opening remarks today. We have a handful of countries that are providing aid and comfort to the Maduro regime at enormous expense to the people of Venezuela. And we want to make sure that the resources that the Venezuelan people are going to need after Maduro leaves, we want to make sure those resources are available for the Venezuelan people and not shipped off to Cuba or to Russia or to Iran. Great. Thanks, everybody.
All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. Like always, thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys missed the speech at any point, it's going to be uploaded on the channel in just a second, so don't go anywhere so you can get the link for that that video. I'm going to leave the chat open for a little while we upload the video, and then we'll be putting it up on the chat so you guys can go and check it out. Thank you so much for choosing Golden State Times as your stream of choice. All right, so we are uploading it right now. It'll take a few minutes, and then I'll put the link in the chat. Thank you so much. Again, this is free chat right now. I'm going to put a little bit of music, and then you guys can hang out if you like, and we'll go on from there. Thank you.
it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cages loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done
All right, folks, let me turn this music off. All right, so we have uploaded the video of the state of Mike Pompeo. If you guys missed it, you guys can just click on that link. If you guys watched it in full, then awesome. Also, make sure to click on the link. That way you go over there, you give it a thumbs up, and you share it on social media. That helps us out so much. I cannot tell you how much that helps us. There's 840 people on this live stream right now on the chat. So if you guys just click on the link and go and watch it if you missed it, or if you got here halfway or towards the end, go and check it out. A lot of good information coming out from the State Department. But if you saw it in full, that's fine too. Just click on the link, go over there, give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, let people know how important it is, and make sure that people know about it. So thank you so much to everyone that is helping us out on that by clicking the link and going over there, giving it a thumbs up and sharing it on social media. Thank you so much, folks. All right, folks. So if you just joined us right now, or you joined us earlier and you missed the State Department press briefing with Mike Pompeo, I'm putting it up on the chat right now. All you have to do is just click on it, and when you get over there, make sure you guys share it and give it a thumbs up and all that good stuff. We're going to be shutting down this live stream soon, so make sure you guys head over there and give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, and watch it if you missed it. It's very, very good. So thank you so much for your continued support. But if you guys can help us by clicking on the link, going over there, giving it a thumbs up, sharing it on social media, saying hello on the chat, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say
All right, folks. So we're going to be shutting this live stream down real quick. If you guys missed the State Department, Mike Pompeo's press briefing, I'm putting it up on the chat. So make sure you guys head over there and give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. If you guys missed it, then make sure to watch it. It's very important, folks. There's a lot of good information coming out. So make sure you guys go and check it out. But like always, if you guys want to continue your conversation, you can do so on the link on the chat. We're going to be shutting this live stream down. Thank you so much for tuning in and choosing Golden State Times as your stream of choice. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.